What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In this video we bring you another post-race voiceover special. That's right, I hopped into this race at the beginning of the final week of the Porsche Cup here in season 2 of 2024, and this week we are racing around the circuit Zandvoort out in the Netherlands. I'm a really big fan of this track in real life, and it's definitely translated into iRacing as well. We of course decided to start at the back. I've tried to stop, I'm not gonna say stop, but I've tried to reduce the amount of time that I am starting from the pit lane, getting used to, you know, starting a race on the grid. And as we saw already, a lot of incidents ahead that we've been able to move up a few positions. We started this race here in P14, and we're just gonna do our best to do our common goals that we do every single time out, which is just try to run a very clean race, a very measured race. And as I love to say on stream, we try not to do a murder and we try to not receive a murder. We just try and run very solid lines, you know, really not taking too many risks and taking advantage of moments like this where you're trying to hang one around the outside of a long left-hander. Of course, I definitely left much more space than I initially intended to when I was running this race. Racing on a single monitor will definitely do that for you, where you just really just have no real situational awareness on your extreme left or right. I got the call that they were on the inside, so I decided to just leave as much room as possible. Thankfully, we make the move stick, a beautiful move around the outside, and we have moved up quite a few positions already in this one as we come home around the famous banked final corner here at Zandvoort, tucking into the slipstream of the car in a front, and we begin lap 2 already. Now, I did decide early on in this race that we were going to try and be a little more aggressive than we have been in years past, as someone just decides to head to the beach a little early. Guys, the season's not over yet. We still have 1 week remaining. So he heads off. That's 2 positions in 1 corner. But yeah, like I was saying, I decided I wanted to try and be a little more aggressive, not overly aggressive. I mean, we talked about it a lot this season, but trying just not to overdrive the car in our own abilities. But at the same time, my iRating has taken an absolute beating here in the back half of this season. And so I was definitely being put in some lobbies with some people who I don't think were quite as consistent as I was at this point. And so I tried to tell myself to not necessarily be reckless, but at the same time, I could afford to be a little more aggressive with moves, not even necessarily, you know, on the edge kind of moves. We just tried to take advantage of moments that we saw an opportunity and to not be afraid to take it. Going into next season, season 3, we're gonna try and, you know, spread our wings a little bit and have a few more series come to the channel, so stay tuned for that. But in doing that, I know we don't always want to just be starting from the pit lane and not, you know, trying not to make too many splashes. At some point, we're gonna have to learn how to race other people on track, and so we're using this week as an opportunity to learn just that. So starting on the grid in this one, as we come home to finish P2, we're actually going to jump ahead a few laps as we, you know, settle into a nice little groove here, and we'll move forward just to keep things moving along a little bit. So here we are on lap 5 now. We have a everyone's worst nightmare, which is a guy or person with a connection issue. He was blinking all over the place, and you best believe that I was terrified from start to finish. I hate racing next to people who are blinking, just because for these longer stretches where they're blinked out, you just have no idea where they're going to end up. And with the net code that iRacing has, I think we all know that sometimes it's just the worst case scenario, and you'll just, you know, be sent to the shadow realm for no fault of your own. And so this is definitely one of those situations I always love to, you know, preach starting from the back and starting from the pit lane to avoid, but you know, you can't always do that. And so here we're using this as an opportunity to get brave, to try and do our best to predict where they're going to be if they do blink out, and to try and get past them as soon as possible, because I don't want to be driving, you know, behind a guy who's blinking like this for the next 9 laps here at Zandvoort. So we're gonna sit back and get a measure of what's ahead, and we're going to try and do our best. Now here's a bit of an unlucky moment here. The gray car who's ahead of us now has a moment coming out of that long left-hander, and we tried to follow one through, but that mini back straight here is Zandvoort is just not long enough, and you can see that they just get away from us and we are unable to make the move. But at the same time, we definitely chose right on not being overly aggressive there and decided to sit back and bide our time. And you can already see here that the purple and black car ahead definitely does not seem to have the same level of consistency. And so here we are tucking up behind the back of them for just a few more laps. Now on lap 7, we have a nice little pack forming here as the purple and black car runs a little wide, and this is the moments that danger lurks around quite literally every corner. And so this is definitely a moment where we definitely want to start moving through this group if we can, and we're just gotta have to pick our moments here, because Zandvoort, believe it or not, if you know the circuit, not that great for overtaking opportunities outside of a few choice moments or awaiting a mistake from a driver ahead. And we can see that some of these guys taking some less than optimal lines through here, I think, leaving definite opportunities lying ahead. It's just all about picking the right one and being aggressive here. You can see right here, just showing our nose a little bit. I was half tempted to try and make a move there, but he kind of darted a little bit to the right and kind of chopped my nose off a little bit. And so I was going to try and get a run down the inside there towards the next right-hander, but I decided to back out and just, sit back and bide our time, like I was saying. Zandvoort, really, you have to be very, very careful about where you make moves, because if you choose the wrong moment or just a bad time, it really will just not end up in your favor here, as the purple and black car gets a terrible run through the chicane. And this is another moment that we have to make a decision. Do we try and stick one up the outside, but we end up just backing out slightly and focusing it more on getting a good exit here out of the final corner, because we do know that turn 1 is the prime time to make a pass here at Zandvoort. So you can see that he doesn't get a good run out of there. He braked the toe. We decided to take the path of least resistance here and just hugging in straight, and here we've decided to do it. We're making the move. We have the overspeed. We're gonna go down the inside, kind of try and brake as late as possible, and we've seen the purple and black car go wide here into turn 1, try and carry a little bit too much speed. We use that to our advantage and we move up past, and now the only thing on my mind is get as far away from that person as possible. We know people don't enjoy being overtaken, and we definitely don't need a guy blinking like that coming up on behind us and just ruining our race. So we now have a pack of 4 where we are the third of 4, as we saw come through the little carousel banked left-hander, as the 2 gray cars ahead are just having a bit of a moment going through there, and we sense a little bit of weakness coming through from these guys. These guys have been battling for a couple of laps now, and we need to put a bit of distance in on this one. I know for a fact here, I was thinking I would love to just get between these 2 gray cars. And once again, that purple and black car behind is just always on my mind, always lurking behind, because when you run in packs, eventually, especially in the lower levels of iRacing, it's a disaster waiting to happen. And so we're definitely still here trying to do our best and just running clean, not trying to be overly aggressive, but at the same time always showing our nose just enough to kind of be in the mind of the driver ahead. And I think we've seen that over these last couple of laps, as whoever we're directly behind has definitely fallen away from the driver they're following, as I think, or it could be just my own imagination, as they are focused more on me than they are on their own race ahead. So I think that helps, as they lose the toe, especially going down here into turn 1, as we feign a little movement, trying to get them to think about us just a little bit. And you can see they carry a little bit too much speed through there. We're going to try and hug a tight line, get the power down, but unfortunately not enough there. But that's going to be a move that I think we're going to try and utilize a lot here without having to dive down the inside, as the car ahead is very slow, and now he's blinking as well. What is going on here? Now this is another moment where I decided to think better. I really thought about trying to go side by side through here and try and keep my nose in there, but I mean, this section is just death awaiting if you try and go side by side. So instead, I decided to fall back on old faithful, not making any brash decisions, settling in behind. You can see there's a nice large gap forming ahead, so he is going to be very close to not even receiving any kind of tow on any of these straights, and we're going to try and take advantages. We just try and stay right on his rear bumper, always keeping him in our sights should we get the opportunity here. that was an example. I'm gonna tangent briefly. That was an example of a problem I did have with that specific corner here, is I always tried to take it a little wider to try and take, you know, a bit of a later apex. My problem was I never actually made it to the apex, and I was just going unnecessarily wide. And I did it a few times here in this race, if you've noticed, and that's something I definitely need to work on, is if I'm gonna do something like that, I definitely need to make sure I'm executing it or just not do it at all. But something I was really good at doing is really, you know, maximizing that final, not the final corner, but, you know, that final right-hander on the way towards the final corner, trying to just maximize the speed out of there, because, I mean, like I've said many times, like turn one is just the time to do some overtakes. As the car ahead gets a little bit of oversteer, we decide to send one down the inside. We see a little weakness, you know, he's felt the car, you know, get a little squirrely on it. We're gonna send one down the inside. This is probably one of my most aggressive moves of the entire race. He's gonna try and hug it down all the way on the inside, but that just does not work here, and he's actually gonna go side by side with the purple and black car. He's gonna try and take advantage of that mistake, and he actually moves through as well. And so this is an opportunity to once again create a little, you know, distance behind and try and continue moving forward to try and now close the distance to the next car and continue to move up. But I think that's an example of the kind of move I was willing to make in this race. You know, we saw him have a little bit of a moment, and I think we all know that when you're first, you know, and you're a little lower in iRacing, your experience necessarily isn't as much. I'm definitely still guilty of doing this, is you have a bit of a moment mid-corner, you don't want to spin, and so you back out of the power, and that really compromises your run out of the corner. And so we decide to hug a little bit of a tighter line. He tried to come over and cover us off, but we managed to get just enough alongside that I'm sure he got the call that we were there, and the rest is history, as we made an even more aggressive move towards the right-hander towards that carousel. And so here we are as another opportunity to, you know, maximize our position here. We moved up from P14 here. We're running in the top 5 at this point, and we have our sights set on more, as I really felt like I was one of the better drivers in this lobby of getting a good run out of that final corner, and created as you can see there in the TV cam in the top right, we were able to create quite a bit of a gap as the purple and black car finally loses it going into turn one, trying to keep up with us, and they actually end up spinning out. So now we have a enormous gap behind, and all we know now is that we can focus our eyes forward. We don't have to worry about Blinky McGee over there, Blinky Barry behind us trying to ruin our race. And this actually was a huge moment for me, that in a minute or two we're gonna have to make a tough decision. But as of right now, we knew that this is on. As long as we did what we needed to do, it was a top 5 finish here in our final week of the Porsche Cup, and our first time running this series. But at the same time, we knew we wanted more. We've seen that this gray car ahead, which had created a bit of a gap as we were, you know, fighting with the other gray car behind. And as you can see there, actually, just coming out of that left-hander is the guy in P2. So we're currently sitting here in in P5, rather. Not P2, next guy in P3. So we're currently sitting in P5, chasing down the guy in P4. And so we know that if we can actually make a move here, potentially on this lap, you know, a podium is in sight. Absolutely is in sight. And we're going to try and do our best to make it happen if we can. This has been a nice long stint here of constant battles that we've really enjoyed. And so it's definitely the way we like to go here. As he moves a bit defensive, we decide, you know, compromise that run. We get our nose in, we try and make something happen. We end up backing out just enough. This is a moment where we see that move again. You know, they get a little squirrely, trying to get on the power a little too early. We take a nice tight line, and all of a sudden we move up now into P4 as we move on to the final lap. We actually managed to create a bit of a gap there, as you can see in the TV cam ahead. And now we're just moving ahead straight to the final lap, because this lap is what this video is all about. We're currently in, you know, just outside of where we want to be, and it's time to hunt down the guy ahead who had, I believe, about a 2-second gap on this final lap going into it, and it was at this moment that tough decision I mentioned having to make was, do we push to try and use, you know, the rhythm and the groove that we've been in to try and battle for this final position, or do we take the win? You know, like I mentioned, we started this race in P14 and we have an opportunity to secure a huge finish here in the final week 12 of the Porsche Cup. But at the same time, we've come this far. We sense a little weakness. We can see this guy probably having the same discussion in his own head, braking very early. We don't know what his tire situation is like, but we felt like we've done a pretty good job. And you can just see how much more confident we are on the brakes into these corners and trying our best to potentially make a move here. We know that we really only have one opportunity here. We're too far back to make a dive down here into the sharp right-hander here, and we know it's all going to come down to the exit of that final corner. If we can get a better run than this guy who seems to be very tentative on the throttle and under brakes, we might have an opportunity here. We're doing our best to close the distance, but it's all going to come down to this. I'm going to let you see what happened, and we'll talk about it afterwards. Enjoy. That's right, we end up getting a great run out of the final quarter and end up crossing the finish line to finish on the podium. That's the things you love to see. I told you multiple times in this race that that final exit is the most important run on this entire circuit, and what a way to finish out our first season in the Porsche Cup. It was an absolute banger of a race, absolutely 0 incident points, and a P14 to podium run. Absolutely fantastic race from us. I was so pumped up by this race, and you couldn't believe what happens. But for now, let's go ahead, let's check out some of these incidents that happened in this race, and then we'll head and check the final results here in 312. So here we are checking out some of these incidents we saw in this race. The race start was absolutely chaos as everyone tiptoeing their way through here, and you can see just carnage already with that purple car getting shunted, coming back onto the track and taking out another guy just behind. But man, Zandvoort is one of these tracks that if you're not prepared to do, you know, run exactly perfectly, you're gonna run into traffic somewhere, and if you don't know what you're doing, you're definitely gonna have some issues, as we see a guy forgetting to brake and turn into a right-hander, and then the number 15 car going to the beach just a little early. Guys, like I said, it's still week 12. We can't keep going to the beach like this. Number 13. But that's a big shunt, and I think that's going to be his race pretty much ended. Here's our friend, the purple and black car. You're going to see a lot of him here in this, as we saw a lot of blinking here. But the number 9 car, unfortunately, taken out by the yellow car behind. And it's just, you saw a lot of this. The number 9 car did not have a good time here in this one, just on the power and just round to go. That's something that I really noticed with this Porsche Cup car over the course of this season, is that it's really easy to get the rears spun up and to just lose it going into a corner like this with a little bit too much steering angle. It was pretty easy to catch, but oh man, that's a big shunt. Oh man, that's a big shunt behind. But yeah, it was really easy this season to see just how easy it was to get the the rear loose under braking, especially as the number 12 car. We see a carbon copy of the incident we saw earlier, but it's so easy to lose it, especially with a car with no ABS. It was just not the way to go. But let's move on now to our race results, shall we? Let's take a look here and see what we got. It's our final round here in the Porsche Cup. We were in split 2 of 2 with a strength of field of 983, and as you can see there, we went double green with a safety rating gain of plus 0.22, bringing us to a 2.99 average. We definitely had to hop into a couple of other sports car races to try and get that safety rating over that 3.0 number before the end of this season. And in terms of iRating, we gained plus 62. Absolutely fantastic result for us here as we come home to finish P3. We were the number 5 car here, so starting P14 and finishing on the podium is a huge win. You can see that we actually ran pretty well. Our fastest time wasn't necessarily of the top 4. We were in last, but at the same time we were just a little over a tenth off of Andres up there in P1 with his A safety rating. Jealous, if I do say so myself. So I definitely felt like I got into a groove in this one, and I think our average lap time probably says more. I think there were definitely some laps that I did better, but at the same time, not too shabby at all. And if we take a look at their biggest winners and losers from this race, let's see. I think our biggest winner is in fact Andres up there, gaining plus 84, and our biggest loser looks to be Joao Martin down there in P20, who lost 80. Guys, bringing you this Porsche Cup season has been an absolute pleasure. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. I'm really excited about the future, not only in this series, but as well as the others that we're going to be bringing going forward. But we're here, guys. That's going to wrap it up for me here. Enjoy week 13. I'm not sure what week 13 content we're going to bring to the channel, but we're going to try and have some fun. It's going to be the first week 13 that I'm actually taking part in, and we'll prepare, and I'll be making a video outlining what my goals are for season 3 right before it goes, so you can expect that coming before week 1 here in season 3. But guys, I really enjoyed it. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe below if you enjoy sim racing content. We're bringing a lot of iRacing content coming up over the next season. Leave a comment down below what you thought of my final race here at Zandvoort, as well as what you're looking forward to in season 3. I know it should only be a few days away by the time this video comes out. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like rating, as it does really help me out with the algorithm. But guys, that's going to wrap it up for me here, and I'll see you in the next one.